Do you think, breathe, move, and make sounds? Then you're doing magic. Dr. Teresa Bullard defines magic as to change nothing into something or something into something else. By that definition, we're all doing magic. So, if the word magic sparks a visual parade of hocus pocus and Harry Potter in your mind, let's shatter this frame for a moment. Welcome to Mage Space. For most of human history, magic was how people understood and used the natural forces of nature to live better lives. The magic of the past is the science and technology of today. What was once called magic can be seen in the principles of engineering, physics, chemistry, and biology. Ancient irrigation systems that moved water from one place to another were once called magic. Today they're called pipes. The architectural marvels of the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, achieved without modern machinery and technology, were once considered divine or magical due to their grandeur and precision, which in the end all kind of boils down to really good math, depending on what lens you choose to see the universe through. Ancient alchemy, the process of transforming one thing into another, laid the groundwork for modern scientific methods and chemistry. Furthermore, medicine, using a plant to heal a wound or a fever, used to be magic. Now it's pharmacology, understood through the biochemistry of active ingredients interacting with the human body. Simple ideas like the wheel, boats, and making mixed drinks were once amazing inventions. Mandrake root and honey mixed in a cup of wine was an ancient love potion. Today, you can go to a bar and buy a spicy margarita for $9 and it'll basically do the same thing. My goal today is to demystify the concept of magic by illustrating its historical function as an integrated system of knowledge that combined elements of science, religion, and philosophy. Magic is humans collaborating with the universe. It's people stepping into their power, saying, I am a creator, not a victim. It's using one's talents instead of burying them. It's the process of drawing energy in, holding it, shaping it, and releasing it to carry out an appointed task. Dr. Richard Kiekefer defines magic as techniques to bring about material change by uncanny means at the will of the performer. What's uncanny is my iPhone. You want uncanny? People fly. One person's uncanny is another person's everyday life. Let's stop using the word supernatural to describe things we can't comprehend yet. Descending deeper into the depths of the details. There's trick magic, magic with a C, David Copperfield, entertaining illusions, that's its own thing. Then there are learned systems of real magic, magic with a K, found throughout Western occultism. Occasionally, both throughout history and in the present day, these two traditions nudge together, but there is a significant distinction. C magic, fun and tricks. K magic, spiritual psychology, used for self-improvement and the betterment of our world. We see evidence of this spiritual psychology blossoming all the way back to the cradles of civilization. Now, there are lots of theories on how the universe came into existence. Which came first, the gods or the humans? Was it a big bang or a divine breath? Were the quote-unquote gods actually aliens? Did aliens build the pyramids? Is there an ancient civilization older than Sumer, buried at the bottom of the ocean right now? I don't want to open that can of worms today, so let's keep our machetes sheathed for now and just start with what modern scholars consider the cradles of civilization. In the Fertile Crescent, ancient Mesopotamia, godheads represented natural forces. The interplay of gods and natural forces shaped the Mesopotamian understanding of the world. This was a culture that personified elements of nature in their deities, each carrying unique effects. Anu was the god of the sky and heavens, the king of gods, and father to many of the other god forms. Enlil, son of Anu, the god of air, wind, earth, and storms, was a force of kingship and fertility. Enki, another son of Anu, god of water, knowledge, and creation, protected humanity with wisdom and ingenuity. These god forms were representations of terrestrial and extraterrestrial forces, blending divine revelations with human imagination. Inanna, the goddess of love and war, descended into the underworld ruled by her sister Ereshkigal, stripped of her powers and killed. Her death caused all reproductive life on Earth to cease. Revived by the god Enki, Inanna had to provide a substitute for her place in the underworld, choosing her complacent husband Tamuz. This myth aligns with astrological cycles. Inanna, or Ishtar, is associated with Venus, which symbolizes love, beauty, and fertility. Venus's retrograde periods echo Inanna's descent, symbolizing introspection and transformation. Tammuz's cycle of death and rebirth mirrors the sun's journey through the zodiac, marking the changing seasons. The story is also deeply connected to agriculture. Tammuz's time in the underworld corresponds to barren months, while his rebirth signals fertile seasons. This personified narrative serves as a cosmic allegory for natural and astrological cycles, reflecting the ancient understanding of interconnected celestial and earthly rhythms. As Mesopotamian deities were closely associated with heavenly bodies, this was the natural birthplace of astrology. But the ancient Mesopotamians were generally scared of the forces of nature. They thought the wind was uncanny, and there was an acute fear of trying to manipulate energy. They also had a crippling fear of demons. The term witchcraft is European and wouldn't have been used at this time and by these people, but witchcraft, mixing herbs with knowledge, elements, intentions, and other things, was punishable by death. It was widespread talk at the Fertile Crescent water coolers that witches drew their power from demons. And fun fact, the first sink or float swimming test for a witch is found in the Babylonian law code of Hammurabi from 1800 BCE. Ancient Egypt was the primary birthplace of Western occultism. The Egyptian philosophy was united by the belief that the cosmos was animated and controlled by a morally neutral spiritual power. A sort of webbed-like net that held everything together. A current of energy woven within and throughout the fabric of the universe. This power was manipulated and controlled by the goddesses and gods to regulate and maintain the natural order. But it could also be used against them and employed by human beings independently and for their own ends. The Egyptians called this power Heka, and Heka means magic. The mobilization of Heka consisted of ritual to unite the necessary words and materials through action, ritual. The Egyptian god forms called netters represented forces of nature and the cosmos, but they were also seen as adepts and masters of magic. They were highly skilled Heka handlers, and it was believed that the netters sanctioned the use of magic by humans who paid them the necessary respect, ritual. In Egypt, Heka and religion were completely intermingled. Priests were also professional magicians. The Egyptians viewed things through a metaphysical lens, heavy on the logos and objective realities. They saw magic as science. It was all woven together under the shared quest for understanding the world and harnessing the forces of nature and the cosmos to live better lives. If Mesopotamia was the birthplace of astrology, then Egypt is where it was raised. The Egyptians developed the first solar calendar, and they grouped the constellations into the 36 decans of astrology, which later influenced Hellenistic astrology. Stars, forces of nature, deities, correspondences. Powers have faces, planets have personalities, stars have stories. Now take a step back and you'll notice patterns in mythology. One tradition's archangel is another tradition's god. Patterns in mythology. One of the biggest examples of this is the case of Thoth, Hermes, and Hermes Tris. Thoth was a prominent netter in ancient Egyptian mythology, known for wisdom, writing, and knowledge. He was often depicted as a man with the head of an ibis bird. Thoth was considered the scribe of the gods and the inventor of writing, hieroglyphics, and language. He also served as the mediator and messenger for the gods. The Thoth vibe traveled throughout the world and across many cultures, assuming more than one form, like a sort of Gandalf figure, known by different names but for very similar reasons. When the Greeks encountered Egyptian culture, they identified Thoth with their own god Hermes. Hermes was the Greek god of communication, commerce, and travel, often depicted with winged sandals and a caduceus, a staff with two entwined snakes. The shared attributes of Thoth and Hermes, combined with the philosophical exploration of the Greeks, led to the creation of the legendary amalgamation figure known as Hermes Tris. Hermes Tris means Hermes the thrice great, signifying his mastery of the three parts of wisdom that make up the whole universe: alchemy, astrology, and theurgy. This mysterious figure is depicted as a wise and ancient philosopher, credited with writing the Corpus Hermeticum. These texts are very influential in the development of Western esoteric traditions. Greek thought was influenced by both Mesopotamian and Egyptian cultures. They contemplated these influences in the nature of existence, and this was the rise of philosophical inquiry. In Greece, the gods were portrayed with human traits and emotions, embodying both divine and mortal characteristics. Greek mythology, rich with tales of love, betrayal, and heroism, depicted the gods and goddesses with complex personalities. The soap operas of Olympus, ergo Zeus sticking his hand in the cookie jar again, are prime examples of Greek artistic expression. The Greeks loved theater, elaborate masks, dramatic performances, exploring human nature and the divine, and blending entertainment with philosophical inquiry. What's interesting to me are the different perspectives that humans had. The Egyptian perspective was a morally neutral spiritual power. The Egyptian goddesses and gods did not exhibit much human nature. They did portray some human-like qualities, but for the most part, they kind of acted like AI, much unlike the Greek gods and goddesses who often just seemed like really large humans wielding significantly more power. In Greece, there was a clear distinction between magic and religion. They also didn't practice magic like the Egyptians did, and the idea of manipulating deities was generally frowned upon and seen as dangerous. There were the Eleusinian mysteries, the Dionysian rites, and the cult of Demeter, but the general attitude of the ceremonies found throughout those traditions were more in line with asking deities to grace humanity with their gifts, instead of manipulating them like ingredients found in a cookbook. Greek mathematics flourished with figures like Pythagoras, Socrates, and Plato. Pythagoras took a mystical approach to numbers and made significant contributions to math and music theory. Socrates and Plato's explorations of ethics, reality, and knowledge laid the groundwork for Western philosophy. Plato's philosophy, particularly his theory of forms, influenced Western occult traditions, emphasizing the existence of a higher reality beyond the physical world. For Plato, the stars and planets were embodied gods. And as knowledge blossomed and ideas exchanged, the city of Alexandria emerged as a vibrant center of learning and culture. The Library of Alexandria, a beacon of knowledge, housed texts on science, philosophy, medicine, and magic, serving as a hub for scholars from across the ancient world. Here, the culmination of centuries of thought and discovery came together, blending Egyptian, Greek, and other cultural insights into a rich tapestry of knowledge. The Library of Alexandria represents the zenith of ancient intellectual and mystical pursuits, embodying humanity's enduring quest to understand and shape the world. This zenith of ancient intellectual and mystical pursuits cranked the flames of the sacred fire from which the Western occult paths were forged. This sacred flame will light the way to more enchantment come what may in part 2 of this series. Stay tuned, subscribe to see it, tap like if this video was for you, and share this video if you feel it may also be for someone else. Thank you for watching.